Support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum. Located in Jennings City Hall, the museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is a historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. Additional support provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.
My faith informs my views on just about everything that I do as governor, and the people who elected me and the people that I serve deserve to know.
At the midway point of his first term, Governor John Bel Edwards on what he's pleased with, what keeps him up at night, and what keeps him grounded, plus why he believes there are great days ahead for Louisiana. Hi everyone, I'm André Moreau. On this special edition of The State We're In, my exclusive one-on-one interview with Governor John Bel Edwards. He's now 2 years into his first term as Louisiana's 56th governor. High achievement has been a hallmark of his life. Top of the class, U.S. Army veteran, lawyer, then in 2008, politics. He's a rarity, a blue Democrat in a sea of red that is the Deep South. With Edwards, it's not party affiliation, but inclusion of all. That's the message you hear. His biggest challenges lie ahead in bringing financial stability to Louisiana. But can he bring enough people together to reach those goals? Politico magazine, in a recent article, is asking the question if this governor can teach Democrats how to win the South. Can you?
Well, first of all, my plate is full here, and all of my efforts and energy are going towards being the very best governor I can be in Louisiana. And we still have our share of challenges, even though we're doing much, much better. But I will tell you, at the national level, I'm distressed at what's happening with respect to the political parties. It seems like the Republicans are moving further and further to the right, the Democrats moving further and further to the left. And people in the center of the political spectrum, whether they're independents, Democrats, or Republicans, increasingly believe nobody is really speaking for them. And I think that that does present an opportunity, not just for one party or the other, but an opportunity for whoever happens to be in the middle of the political spectrum and can convince people that they are authentic, that they are sincere. Because, by the way, that's where I think the solutions to our problems are. The long-term solutions are not going to be found at the extremes. They're going to be found in the center of the political spectrum. That's what I'm trying to do here in Louisiana. And if it gains favorable attention elsewhere, I guess that's a good thing, but that's not my focus.
Are the people in the center, in the middle, are they not speaking out, having their voices heard?
Well, they really aren't. Their voices aren't being reflected by what's happening in the conversation in this country right now around politics and around policy. Certainly not coming out of Washington, where very little gets done. You've got Republicans and Democrats who don't sit down and talk to one another anymore. They don't really try to come up with a consensus on how to move forward and tackle the biggest challenges of the day. And in fact, in many cases, it seems as though they try on purpose to fashion something that doesn't get any votes from the other side. And I think that doesn't bode well for our future. We're going to continue to push bipartisan ideas here in Louisiana. You know, I've got an administration that looks like the state of Louisiana, including party registration. And my chief of staff, my commissioner of administration, both being Republicans, and other Republicans in the administration as well, because I happen to believe that the people of Louisiana are best served by that approach.
Well, you've had time to get your feet wet as governor, I would say. What is your biggest achievement that you would say so far in your tenure?
You know, if I had to say, I'd want to say three things. First of all, we've stabilized the budget situation in Louisiana. Secondly, the Medicaid expansion, where we have more people insured than ever before. And third, the criminal justice reform. With respect to stabilizing the budget, the first full fiscal year that I was governor, we had a $2 billion deficit that I inherited. That's a state general fund deficit. We closed out that year, June 30th, with a little over $100 million surplus. Wasn't easy. In fact, we cut over $600 million in state general fund expenditures since I've been governor. We saved about $300 million because of the Medicaid expansion, and we did raise revenue for the difference. Very challenging time, but as a result of the stability that we now have, for the first time in a decade, We didn't cut higher education relative to the previous year.
Right.
And we fully funded the TOPS program. And by the way, we're not on track to have a mid-year deficit this year for the first time in a very, very long time. So we've got some real momentum in Louisiana as it relates to turning around the budget, but also the Medicaid expansion. Over 400,000 working Louisiana adults with health insurance, many of them for the first time in their lives, saving money, but more importantly, saving lives. The percentage of uninsured in Louisiana went from about 24% to about 9% since I've been governor, making a tremendous difference as we work to improve health outcomes and give people a higher quality of life, allow them to be more productive, stay in the workforce longer. We are seeing the benefits of Medicaid expansion and other policies that we're pursuing. But this year we also signed into law 10 bills around criminal justice reform that emulate what's been done in other southern conservative states who had a head start on us. They started about 10 years ago. We know we're going to save money that we can reinvest for prison alternatives, for drug treatment, for mental illness issues, but also for education and training. We should not have the highest incarceration rate in the nation and spend more than $700 million a year on our Department of Corrections. We can do better. We are going to do better while we improve public safety in the process. So those three things over my first 2 years would, in my estimation, be the most significant accomplishments.
Well, you mentioned Medicaid, and I'll ask you this. Is it safe, though, going forward, since health is still an uncertainty?
You know, I hope so. You saw an effort in Congress around repeal and replace of the Affordable Care Act. Most of the negative talk had to do with insurance that individuals are obtaining through the exchanges in the various states, where there are not enough insurers participating, where the premiums are going up faster than they would like, and those sorts of things. Almost none of the talk had to do with the Medicaid expansion, because that component of the Affordable Care Act is working relatively well, and as it was supposed to. The president has declared a public health emergency around opioids. Well, we've got 15,000 people in Louisiana on Medicaid expansion who've been able to receive substance abuse disorder treatment, both inpatient and outpatient.
And get help.
And that help was not available to these people before. And in conversations with other governors around the country, Democrat and Republican governors who preside over states that have expanded Medicaid, they understand that keeping the Medicaid expansion is a key part of our strategy to actually win this war on opioids.
But that's a huge cost savings also.
Well, it's a big cost savings. In Louisiana, for example, in the current fiscal year, we're going to save over $300 million because of the Medicaid expansion, state general fund dollars. And all we're doing is bringing our federal tax dollars back to Louisiana. Now, we do have to match those dollars locally, but that match never grows more than 10 cents on the dollar. And it's one of the best healthcare matches that we have available to us. And it's just something we can't afford not to do when it comes to restoring people to health, giving them a happier, longer, more productive life where they can work, for example. And by the way, as a pro-life governor, I often say, the same Catholic Christian faith that informs my views on the abortion issue also informs my views on healthcare issues. We are saving lives by getting thousands of people diagnostic evaluations, and hundreds of whom, by the way, have been diagnosed with full-fledged cancers earlier in the disease stages than would have otherwise been the case, and they are given an opportunity for treatment that will work, that will keep them alive. And so it is really about being pro-life as well.
Your biggest disappointment since you've been in
Well,
office?
my biggest disappointment is that we are going to continue to wrestle with the budget in the coming year around the legislative session. We should have fixed it already on a permanent basis, and I'll continue to work with legislative leadership, Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate to get that done. But we've had a full report from a legislatively created task force. I support that task force's recommendations, but not a single one of them have been enacted into law. And in fact, not a single bill has made it out of the Ways and Means Committee in the House of Representatives to be considered by the whole House of Representatives to do what the task force that the legislature created has recommended. So we have to get on top of this because we have a fiscal cliff coming up when June 30th arrives next year. because about $1.1 billion in revenue will fall off the books. And so we have to replace it. We don't need more revenue next year than this year, but it's very important that we replace it. And there's still going to be cuts. It's still going to be a difficult year.
Does that keep you up at night, figuring out how that's going to happen?
André, it does. To be honest with you, there are a number of issues that keep me up at night. But I'm optimistic at the end of the day we're going to figure it out. I am more flexible about how we do this than many might imagine. The one thing that I can tell you is the fifth penny of sales tax does need to roll off the books. That's what the task force recommended. We're an outlier in the country on this tax type, having the highest combined local and state tax burden in the country with respect to the sales tax. We should allow that fifth penny to roll off and then work with the 4 pennies that we will have, plus some other revenue measures. And again, we don't need to raise more revenue next year than this year. I'm not looking for a net tax increase. And there will still be budget cuts when we look at the continuation budget requirements that we have, that are a little over $400 million, by the way.
You're seen as a unifier, calm, as your stewardship as governor. What's the biggest surprise? What's something that you didn't expect until you got into this office?
Well, I will tell you two things: the size of the deficit and just the sheer magnitude of the budget problems. You know, I was a member of the legislature for 8 years, and I remember running for governor. The whole year we were having debates and forums with all the candidates for governor, and we all believed that the size of the problem was somewhere around $600 million. It turned out to be $2 billion.
That's quite a checkbook.
Well, it's a big difference because a solution for a $600 million problem doesn't work at $2 billion. So that has been a real surprise to me. The second is the level of partisanship that we now have in Louisiana. Much more than even when I was in the legislature. It's still a minority of folks in the legislature, particularly in the House, but they would be they seem to be much more interested in partisanship than in problem solving. That's not what I'm looking for. I don't think that's what the people in the state are looking for. And by the way, my door continues to be open to all of those individuals as well, because we have to fix our problems. And André, I am convinced when we do, we have an era of prosperity ahead of us in Louisiana like we haven't seen. Unemployment is down to 4.8%. It was over 6% when I became governor. And you have to go back to May of 2008 to find unemployment where it is today. And it's certainly not mission accomplished. We've got a lot more work to do, and we're going to do that. But it's the unemployment numbers being what they are is the biggest reason why the revenue to the state has stabilized. But more important than that, the revenue for our families because of those jobs has also been stabilized, and our families are going to be doing better. And that's very important, and we need to keep this momentum going forward. DXC Technologies, the other day in New Orleans,
ask you about
the
that.
largest economic development win in the state's history in terms of permanent jobs, direct jobs at one site. In the Central Business District of New Orleans, more than 2,000 jobs coming, direct jobs, another 2,200 indirect, but those direct jobs have an average salary of $63,000, not including the benefits. And so this is the type of thing we can continue to do. We can compete and win. We won over Nashville, Tennessee for that, by the way. But we have to continue to invest in higher education and the talent pipeline that these companies need to be successful here.
Now, do you in economic development have another one of those in your back pocket that you're working on right now?
We're working on a bunch of them, and we certainly hope to have more announcements forthcoming. But I will tell you, we have more direct foreign investment coming into the state of Louisiana than any other state in the nation on a per capita basis, and we're number 2. Compare Louisiana to any other state, whether it's New York, California, Washington, we're number 2 in the country. Recently, something I'm very proud of, Thumbtack designated Louisiana as an A+ for small business climate, and one of only 4 states to get that ranking. So we know we're doing a lot of good things. We've got a long way to go, but I'm very, very happy with the progress we've made, and I see that the future really is very, very positive for our state.
Oil and gas, the lawsuit against the companies that cut through the state and injured wetlands, allowing for saltwater intrusion. Where does that stand?
Well, we have, as a state, have intervened into lawsuits that were filed at the parish levels because those parish suits asserted the state's interest. Well, I believe that's our job as a state. So we have intervened to protect our own interests. We have not filed lawsuits where lawsuits haven't been filed previously by the parishes. So we have lawsuits pending in a number of coastal parishes asserting damages that we have sustained to our coast that will cause us to have to expend money going forward for restoration and protection efforts because of things that oil and gas companies did when they were exploring for and producing oil and gas. Now, not the only cause. There are a number of other causes, but I believe that there was damage that they are responsible for, and to the degree that they ought to participate in paying for the restoration efforts. And so we're going to continue to work with the oil and gas industry. Hopefully there is a resolution forthcoming to this. You know, I don't know, but it would seem that would be in order, at least at some point.
This seemed to be a dead issue a couple of years ago for a while there, but so it's not necessarily.
No, it's certainly not a dead issue. Okay. I mean, the litigation is proceeding in state court in these parishes where these lawsuits have been filed. My door remains open because I happen to think it's in everyone's best interest to sit down and work out a resolution. That's always been my goal. But it is important, I believe, that we hold everyone responsible for the damages that they cause. And look, the oil and gas industry has been very good to Louisiana. An awful lot of jobs over the years and revenue to the state. And that continues to be the case. And as the price of oil continues to rebound, we're looking for more activity here in the state as well. But we do need the oil and gas industry, I believe, to step up and acknowledge its role in the problems that we're having on the coast, and hopefully sit down with them and fashion a solution.
Another issue that's going to see you in court also is the fight for LGBT and equal rights, non-discrimination for state workers. It's been struck down at the lower court, but you're going to the Supreme Court now. What are your hopes there?
Well, first of all, I'm the third governor to issue a similar executive order, and I happen to believe that discrimination, prejudice, are not Louisiana values. And the executive order is fairly straightforward. It just says we're not going to discriminate when it comes to state employment, and we're not going to discriminate when it comes to receiving state services. Now, we did build in an exception. I'm the first governor to do that so that religious organizations and institutions do not have to comply with that particular executive order. But I happen to think it's completely lawful. I think it's appropriate to do. It's consistent with my campaign promises, and I think it's unfortunate that it's tied up in litigation because it's one of those things that I think is good for the state on a number of fronts, from economic development, for example, and making sure that we have a climate in Louisiana where we don't discriminate as a state. I think that's important. And so we're gonna move forward to the next phase of litigation and hopefully be successful.
Family is very important to you. Faith is very important to you. You constantly emphasize that in your role as governor.
Well, it's just part of who I am. It's a big part of who I am. It's how I see the world. My faith informs my views on just about everything that I do as governor, and the people who elected me and the people that I serve deserve to know what a prominent role it plays, not just for me, but in the life of my family. You know, Donna and our kids. You know, it's important. You know, we are committed Catholic Christians, but we acknowledge people of different denominations and, in fact, of other religions can be equally faithful, and that all of us together can chart a much better course for Louisiana and for our country.
And you may have another term ahead that you may be running for, right?
I will be running, and I look forward to it.
Thank you, André. Thank you so much. Following that interview, Edwards this week put forth his plan of action to solve the state's impending financial crisis. He laid out a specific set of solutions that he says will give the people of our state what they've told him they want, and that's the creation of a stable and predictable state budget.
The governor Monday delivered his plans to solve the looming $1 billion fiscal cliff and delivered them with ideas he says lawmakers already know about.
All of the proposals that I'm making come from the legislatively created task force. And in that sense, I'm proposing to the legislature that it adopts its plan.
The task force made those recommendations nearly a year ago, but the legislature never addressed any of them.
If we don't fix the cliff, no one is going to want to put their name on the cuts that are necessary.
On January 19th, the governor and commissioner of administration, Jay Darden, will present legislative leaders with those cuts that are part of a worst-case scenario budget mandate.
That balanced budget proposal is going to call for cuts to health care, optional Medicaid services, partners. It's going to call for cuts to higher education, whether it's state general fund support, TOPS, and a number of other things.
To avoid that grim scenario, the governor's budget plan includes reducing the sales tax back to its pre-2016 level, while expanding sales taxes to services such as debt collection and cable and satellite services. He has also called for compressing state income brackets, though the details of some of the impact at this point are unclear. It does not call for any new taxes. The key to his creation of a stable budget is the timing of that February special session.
I'm not going to call one if there's not broad agreement between me and legislative leadership on a specific plan to move forward, because without that support from the leadership, there's not going to be the two-thirds vote that we need to be successful.
Things haven't gone his way before, so why would he think this time would be any different? He says this time there's a sense of urgency because lawmakers will know beforehand the doomsday cuts necessary to balance the budget.
I always thought it was going to be difficult to get a two-thirds vote out of the legislature to do hard things in the fiscal session in 2017 earlier this year, simply because the legislators' toes weren't dangling off the edge of the cliff yet. Sometimes that's what's required.
We'll be checking reaction from legislators and see how this all plays out. Natchitoches may be a small city, but it's a hot holiday destination with the Natchitoches Christmas and Festival of Lights. Louisiana's oldest city illuminates with events from November into January. It is celebrating its 91st year of the lights. Photographer Vernado Woods takes us there. We head down Interstate 49 from Natchitoches to Alexandria now, where LPB had a hand in helping preserve a Christmas film made there in 1943. Here's a clip from the 22-minute Christ is Born.
They looked with awe and wonderment at the Son of God lying in a manger. Being poor people, they had no gifts to bring the child, but they gave thanks for the things they had witnessed that night.
First United Methodist Church and soldiers stationed at Camp Livingston collaborated to make the film. Just so happened that some of those soldiers were also Hollywood actors. It's in full color, and you can check it out for yourself in our Louisiana Digital Media Archives, LDMA. Right now on LPB Newsmakers, we've got LSU's a cappella choir and their annual Christmas concert. Here's one selection from their performance. Beautiful. You can hear the entire concert by going to lpb.org/newsmakers. Do it in lowercase. Well, that's our show for this week. Remember, you can watch LPB on demand on your phone or tablet with our LPB Anywhere app. The download is free from your app store. You can catch LPB news and public affairs shows, as well as other Louisiana programs that you've come to enjoy over the years. And please like us on Facebook as well. For everyone at Louisiana Public Broadcasting, I'm André Moreau. Thanks so much for watching. Have a safe, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Until next time, that's the state we're in.
Check us out on Facebook and Twitter, and visit lpb.org, where you can view more stories and leave us a comment. This program is available on DVD. Support provided by the Fred B. and Ruth B. Ziegler Foundation and the Ziegler Art Museum. Located in Jennings City Hall, the museum focuses on emerging Louisiana artists and is a historical and cultural center for Southwest Louisiana. Additional support provided by the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting and viewers like you.